temptation is always everywhere. It's always there. Nobody is more clever than an alcoholic or an addict who needs a fix. We'll fucking do anything. You just have to know, I can't breathe underwater. I can't fly through the air like a bird. I can't drink. I can't do them. The breathing underwater thing, that would be cool. That one I would enjoy on. But you just got to get it right in your head that, clarity, just no matter what happens today, nothing in the world can make me drink.
It's time for the Share Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host, O.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of TSP, the Share Podcast. And today we have Mishka Shubaly joining us on the show. Now, just as a disclaimer for some of you hardcore 12-steppers, Mishka is not part of any traditional 12-step recovery program. He's actually not part of any recovery program. He got sober 7 years ago when his alcoholism and opiate abuse almost killed him. So his story is of a very non-traditional way of finding sobriety, but it's such an amazing and interesting story. Mishka has written several Kindle singles for Amazon, which are bestsellers. One of his most famous singles is The Long Run, his mini memoir detailing his transformation from alcoholic drug abuser to sober ultra runner, and is one of his best-selling Kindle singles to date. But today's interview focuses on his book, I Swear I'll Make It Up to You, which is a gripping memoir starting from his childhood all the way up until he finds sobriety. So again, for those of you who have issues with non-traditional forms of 12-step recovery, this may not be the one for you. But for those of you that enjoy a really good story and a really good conversation, Mishka and I had an amazing time just talking about life, sobriety, and living life on life's terms. So let's dive into Mishka's story, but first, a little Share Podcast news. Today's episode of the Share Podcast is brought to you by Addiction Unscripted. AddictionUnscripted.com is one of the leading online publishers of addiction recovery content. They publish relevant, timely, high-quality stories on a daily basis, covering everything from news and opinion segments to personal narratives from those affected by addiction. But that's not even the best part. Addiction Unscripted is a publication made up of nearly all user-generated content. What that means is that Addiction Unscripted is more than a publication. It's a community of people touched by addiction and a major platform that allows people to write or share on the subject of addiction or recovery while reaching the over 250,000 people who visit their site every month. Addiction Unscripted founder Matt Mendoza says, "Our goal is to normalize the stories of brokenness that derive from addiction and to help match the stories that people need to tell with the people who need to hear them." Addiction Unscripted is also currently running their first ever Voices in Recovery Challenge and invites you to participate. There are two $500 prizes at stake, so if you are a voice in recovery and you want the chance to win $500, visit addictionunscripted.com for more information on the Voices in Recovery Challenge. Make sure to submit your story today. Okay, guys, first of all, thanks so much for everyone who has helped support the Share Podcast. And for those of you listening who would like to know how you can help support the Share Podcast, let me give you a couple of ideas. First of all, the most important one, which is absolutely free, is to leave a rating and review on iTunes. iTunes single-handedly is one of the most powerful ways for people to find the Share Podcast. So to make it easy for you guys, what I've done is I've put buttons on the website, www.thesharepodcast.com. Go there on the right-hand side. The very first button reads, subscribe on iTunes. Click on that button. It's going to send you directly to the iTunes podcast app. And from there, you'll click subscribe and then go to the section that says rate and review. And please leave us a 5-star rating. There's no question about it. iTunes is one of the best ways for our listeners to find the Share Podcast, especially when they're searching for it on Google. If you don't have an iPhone, then go to Stitcher Radio. It's the banner right underneath the subscribe on iTunes. Click on that and do the exact same thing. Subscribe and then leave a 5-star rating and review. There's no question about it. This is the best way for you to show your support. I also want to thank all the listeners who have been clicking on the Amazon banner ad. Folks, for those of you wondering what's another fantastic way to support the show is by clicking on that banner before you shop on Amazon. You're going to shop on Amazon anyway. It's not going to cost you 1 penny more, and it kicks back some commission to the Share Podcast. We've already seen a dramatic increase in commission since we added the banner ad. So thanks again, guys. It's helping so much. And as far as being of service, you can also go to the website and click on the Join the Facebook Private Group banner. It'll take you right to the Facebook private group where you can request to be added and do some service. There's newcomers in there that are posting daily, old-timers sharing experience, strength, and hope. It's an absolutely beautiful way to contribute to your own recovery as well as to those in the community. So plug yourself in, get into that private Facebook group. It's absolutely thriving. And again, it's a wonderful way for everyone to be of service. And of course, I want to give a big thank you to all of the listeners who have continued to give donations every month. Thank you guys so much for your generous donations. And for those of you that would like to contribute and help grow and support the Share Podcast financially, you can go to the website, click on the Donate with PayPal button, and it'll take you to the page where you can make your donation. And finally, I want to give credit to the Share Podcast team that is instrumental in producing the Share Podcast. Zinzi Gugu and Evelyn E., who handle the audio editing for each podcast episode. Omar Hernandez, that does all the social media cover art. And Krista Wojo, who handles all of our social media marketing. Without this amazing team, there's no way I could have continued to produce the podcast every week. Thank you, guys. I couldn't do this without you. And finally, would you like to receive the most popular AA daily devotions free in one distribution? Transitions Daily delivers daily devotions from the 24 hours a day, AA Thought for the Day, Daily Reflections, Big Book Quote, Just for Today, As Bill Sees It, plus more. You can get our distribution daily via email, private Facebook group, or Twitter. Go to dailyaaemails.com for more information. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends in meetings and with sponsees in recovery. Now back to the show. Hey, Mishka, thanks for joining us.
What's up, O? How are you?
I am feeling fantastic, brother. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I'm scraping by here.
Excellent. Let's do this, man. All right, folks. Today we have Mishka Shubaly joining us on the Share Podcast, the author of I Swear I'll Make It Up to You, A Life on the Low Road. And a little background, I heard Mishka's interview on the Rich Roll podcast, and his relationship with his dad literally brought me to tears. So it's really an honor, and I'm super excited to have you on the show, Mishka.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm pumped, man. I'm pumped. All right, so let's dive right in, buddy. Okay, so first, let's talk about what is going on today. You know, I mean, it took us, I know we had to schedule this interview kind of early because you're going to be going to Yale, and you're going to be teaching, and you're, going on the road with your book. So tell us about, like, right now, what's going on in your life.
I'm currently on the road, mid-tour. I guess we're about 10 days deep, and we're in Houston, and there were, tornadoes and flooding last night and today. So fortunately, today is a day off. So we had the hotel for 2 days, and I drove back from the show last night, and there were tornado warnings. And then wake up today, and there's all this crazy footage of people swimming from their cars and whatnot. And our room here at the Ramada flooded.
Oh no! Fuck.
Yeah, but what are you going to do? There are so many people who are. We're right by the airports. There's so many people who are just hanging out in the lobby with like no place to stay, no place to sleep.
Man.
So I just, this whole trip has been, just been dodging disaster at every turn. It's been great.
So you're on tour right now. Is this for your singing gig? Is this for the book? What are you on tour for?
I booked, I reached out to my publisher and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this big crazy tour. I'll book shows later at night. You guys book readings. Very few readings ended up coming through. So it's 38 shows in 40 days across the country. We're left from, I was up in Seattle and Portland, then left from LA. We're in Houston right now, working our way across to Florida, up to Minneapolis, Detroit, Chicago, across to New York. I have a day off, fly to the UK for 2 weeks, 2 days off, then go to teach at Yale.
Dude, wow, that's like wild. And what are you teaching over at Yale?
I'm teaching writing. I'm trying to teach people how to do what I do, which is to find a way to translate the bullshit from your life into a clear, compelling, concise narrative for consumption by the world at large.
Well, I'll tell you, folks, if you get a chance, make sure to pick this one up. I swear I'll make it up to you. Is amazing. I got it on audiobooks, so I got a chance to listen to it. And my ADD kept kicking in, so I'd have to keep rewinding it, okay? Because every once in a while, you'd say something, and I would just go into my life. I mean, literally, I would just go into that point in my life that was just as, dysfunctional and wretched. And then I actually thought the same thing. I was like, God, just the way that you write your life out, like there's so much of my life that I could put on paper, and there's probably so many of us that have a book, that have a Hollywood movie. I always say, we all have a Hollywood blockbuster inside of us, especially after we, fight and claw our way through addiction, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's a huge compliment that you've given me, that relating my experience would sort of make would speak to you with enough strength that it makes you expand your own experience in your head. So thanks for that. This is kind of a weird diva writer thing to say, but it's funny, because people, at shows we're playing in whatever dive bars or punk houses or living room shows and stuff like that. And there's always somebody there who doesn't know where I'm from or my story or, what I've been up to. And they sort of walk over to the merch table and pick up the book, and they're like, oh yeah, a book, huh? I always thought I had a book in me. Yeah. You know what else you have in you? A spinal cord. It will be about as hard to get that book out of you as it is to get the spinal cord out. It is a grim process to sort of do that, to do the archaeology and sort of go through, okay, when I was 22, when I was basically subhuman, what was I doing that summer? Let me relive those mistakes. It ain't fun, man.
No, I can't. And again, it was just tidbits. I would get flashbacks, and I don't remember a lot of my childhood, but it was just like little flashbacks that I would get as I was going through the book. And the rhetoric is so strong. I mean, just the way that you describe things is beautifully done. I was super impressed. I have heard a few memoirs, and like we were talking before the interview, Rich Roll, Finding Ultra was one of the ones that I listened to, and also Sarah Hepola's Blackout. And both of those, I mean, Sarah goes into some horrific details about her experiences, waking up from blackouts or right in the middle of a blackout, right? So there's something that's been going on, and I don't know if it's recent, but people are not afraid to be vulnerable these days. I mean, to really talk about those minute details that only happen between you and, maybe one other person, and then that's it. And you definitely don't talk about it. And so I think that today it's becoming a lot easier, a lot more accessible to really dig down deep and talk about these moments. There was a lot of very, very personal things that you discussed, in your book that we'll touch in a little bit later. But do you feel that that's the case in today's generation?
Yeah, I mean, there's, I feel like there's a whole sort of lexicon that's risen up around that, of oversharing or TMI. I don't know. I'm conflicted about that. I'm not quite sure where I stand on that. On the one hand, my Facebook is just a ton of random strangers who have added me. I probably have like war criminals on there and I don't know about it. But, so I'll see people, I don't know on my feed who are sort of like soliciting, prayers or positive vibes for somebody or sort of like griping about, someone else in a public forum. And I'm sort of like, just keep that to yourself. It's not serving any purpose. But then, I share pictures or, things that come to me on the road or, and like, I talk, obviously, my songs are pretty gritty and my writing is pretty gritty. As a writer, I think I recognized early on that I wanted to know the entire length and breadth of human existence. If you look at, a Hollywood blockbuster like Jason Bourne or something like that, there's very few sort of like rough mornings where somebody's sprinting for the bathroom to throw up, and there's never, even an awkward moment where they go in for a kiss and somebody gets the other person's nose, or you know what I mean? Like, and that's a huge part of human experience. I feel like our lives are much more of that stuff, the awkward stuff, than it is the sexy action movie shit. Telling those stories that you're ashamed of and sharing those secrets with others, either in public or in private. I mean, it really like sets you free, man. If there was going to be, some vengeful investigative reporter, who tried to do an expose on me, they wouldn't find anything because I've already embarrassed myself worse than anyone else ever could, so I'm sort of, it's like I'm safe now.
Oh, man, absolutely. So, I want to get into your story, but I definitely want to find out a little bit more about the after, like when you got sober. So how much clean time do you have right now, and what's your anniversary date?
Well, I'm creeping up on 7 years. I tried not to really track my anniversary date. It's because what I said to myself early on in sobriety when I decided that I was actually going to do this was I said, I'm not going to count days, because in my mind that just, reminded me of like an old cartoon where there's some guy locked up in prison and he's like, making a mark on the wall for each day. And my thought was, I want my life to be so rich and so exciting and to be so engaged in it that I'm not like white knuckling it through day after day, but instead that I'm engaged in a meaningful and even, fun life, to the point where I'm like, oh shit, another year has passed. Wow, I can't believe it. Which is a long way of saying, I think it's the end of May sometime, May 26th, May 29th. I have it marked on my calendar somewhere, but it'll be 7 years then.
Okay. Well, we can say May 26th. My anniversary is actually May 26th as well.
Oh yeah.
May 20th. Yeah. I'll celebrate 13 years this May 26th. So there we go.
Congratulations.
We're brothers.
I'll be raising a tall glass of bubbly water in your honor.
Same here. All right. So then let's talk about those 7 years, how you've managed to stay sober. What's your routine look like for maintaining your sobriety?
I know that a lot of people in recovery have a program that they adhere to, or they have routines or rituals or, sort of things they do every single day. I don't. Very early on in my sobriety, I recognized that I didn't know how to live as a human being. And I didn't, and that, sorry, there's a plane going over right now. And that, if you think about it, stopping drinking is the easiest thing in the world. You just put down the bottle and you never pick it up again, right? That's a discrete task. The challenging thing is, what do you put in your life in its place? What do you put in there so that alcohol doesn't come creeping back in? I drank, pretty hard from, 14 or 15 to 32. There were times in there where I would quit for a month or a couple of months, or one time I even quit for a year. So I knew how to quit. You just like stop and lock yourself up and drink lots of water and do everything you can to sort of minimize the withdrawal. But I didn't know how to live as a human being. So when I was too angry or too depressed or just bored or didn't know what to do with my time or do with my day, I would just go out running. That was a very therapeutic tool that I used early on to get my head together. And then I started going to therapy, which I really didn't engage until I was probably like at least a year sober. And then I found the right counselor, and then we sort of like really dug into big issues. But now I try and exercise as frequently as possible because I've never gone on a run and regretted it. And that can be running or yoga or boxing or, today I went into the like flooded gym here and cranked out a miserable half hour on the bike and then lifted some weights, just to sort of, clear my head. I try hard to do something like for myself, something that I enjoy each day. That often comes in the form of like just playing with a dog for a minute, just sort of like really. My sister has 3 big dogs, which I love to death. And one day I was like, all right, Harley, I'm just going to pat you until you're sick of it. I'm going to pat you. I'm going to give you all the attention you need. I'm just going to pat you until you've had enough and you wander away. And it never happened.
No, never.
I was like, dude, I got to tap out. My arms are burning. Like, I can't do this anymore, and like, geez. So, I didn't go to rehab. I've never gone to meetings. That's never been a part of my program. And, and in fact, I didn't want to leave the cult of alcohol to join the cult of recovery. I wanted to reintegrate myself with the rest of humanity and get to a point where alcohol was just irrelevant. I know that I'll never get there, with, nearly 7 years on it now. I understand that that's, for an alcoholic and an addict, that's not possible, and that it will always be pushing on me, and I will always be pushing back. But I knew that I didn't want it to be my entire identity. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm a hack guitar player, and I'm a songwriter, and I'm a writer, and I'm a runner, and I do a lot of things.
Well, and I want to speak to that because in my group, I have a private group just for recovering addicts and alcoholics. And so it's a safe haven, and there's quite a few of them that don't want to go to meetings and don't want to be associated with that sort of a program, or they don't want to be, like you're saying, I don't want my label to be a recovery guy, so to speak. So let's speak to that, okay? Because something that you mentioned right as we started talking about this topic was that you simply have to replace it with something else. So for you, in the beginning was running, and then you went to therapy. Is there something more? Or is it just that you created this new lifestyle to replace the old one?
Well, let me tweak what you said there a little bit, because when you listen back, you'll hear that I said, first you stop drinking. That's the big thing. You break the spell. And then there's space in your life, and you have to fill it with something. There's sort of a pervasive thing in well-intentioned interviews and pieces that people have written about me where they say, oh, he replaced his alcohol addiction with a running addiction. That's false. That's untrue. That's absolutely wrong. What I did was I removed alcohol from my life. That's step 1. Then step 2, when alcohol was gone, I started putting other things in it. And what I put in it was writing, running, reconnecting with my family, improving my friendships, trying to be a success, trying to run, trying to become more flexible, trying to become stronger, trying to be more patient, trying every day, now I've forgotten your question.
The question was, what did you replace it with? And you just answered it, but you also clarified where I came from in the beginning, where it wasn't so much about me. It wasn't so much about you replacing, alcohol for something. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because and that's the thing. That's one of the things that I really sort of want to search and destroy, because I was not replacing one addiction with another, because I've done that and I know what that's like. I switched from drinking to doing drugs, and I was like, oh, I don't drink anymore because I'm just doing all these hardcore opiates. And no, that's not an upgrade, and that's not an acceptable means of quitting drinking. I had to break the spell, and I did. And I continue to do it every day. And actually, let's talk about that. I'm a musician. So I did like 100 shows on the road last year. I'll do at least that again this year. Those shows happen in bars. People drink. Sometimes people send drinks up to the stage. When I was 2 months sober, I was working in a bar. I was bartending. I was managing. I was, throwing people out. There was all kinds of temptation, and there was all kinds of instances where I could fuck up. So what I had to do was just get right in my head with what I do and what I don't do, and what alcohol means for me, and what life I want to live, and what kind of decisions I want to make, and all that stuff. And just every time that, I have some incredibly good memories of drinking. We all do. I remember being on tour with my buddy Mike, who is now also sober. We drove like 10 hours through the Texas heat and got to some crappy little hotel. And, we got these 40s and they were just ice cold, like hurt your hand, and got in a hot shower and like drinking that cold beer. And it was so amazing. Every time I feel lust to sort of recreate one of those scenes, I just call to mind one of the hangovers that I had.
Yeah.
Or like the cops waking me up in the morning, or like waking up in a bed that looked like a murdered hooker because there was so much blood, and just shit like that. It's like, okay, let's not deceive ourselves. It's real easy to remember that, like that sexy first drink that, looks like it's coming out of a fucking beer commercial or something like that. Right. It looks like, a frosted jewel, pulled out of this chasm of ice, That's not what it's like, man. Remember the end.
Yeah.
Remember how it ends. It always ends in shame and guilt and like cheap Chinese food and questionable company and bad decisions and just so much regret. I woke up the other morning, like didn't get a good night's sleep and, sort of erratic sleep for 5 hours. I woke up and I was like, man, I don't need hangovers for mornings to suck. Like, imagine if I was drinking, how terrible this would be, and that was a good reminder. You just got to get right in your head, man. And, for some people that happens with AA or NA or the 12 steps, or they create their own program or they have a structure. But really what it is clarity is the anti-drug. You got to know what's coming when you take that first sexy drink.
Yeah. And then you play the tape through and you come to the realization of where this is going to end. And, you're able to talk yourself out of it because, the endings were so bad for so many times. And yeah, while I was going through your book, there was tons of, I'm going to quit for a while. And then you'd go back in and you'd go back even stronger and even harder. So
Yep.
The hangovers were even worse. But do you have a support group that you lean on? That also, like your buddy Mike, who's also sober, are those the kind of people that you typically hang around with?
No. I mean, most of my friends still drink. Most of my friends don't. This was a hard epiphany for me to realize. But we're told that like, oh, when you quit drinking, you're going to lose all these friends because there are all these people around you who are they're just a bad influence on you, and they're sort of like, sending you down the wrong road. And like when you stop drinking, those people you'll have to break up with them or they'll just fall away from your life. I lost an incredibly an incredibly small amount of friends. And it made me realize that I was that guy.
Yeah.
I was the guy for them who were like, no, fuck beer, we're getting shots, or fuck shots, we're getting some blow, or like we're getting more blow, or, we're just going for it.
Right.
So I was like, oh shit, I was that guy.
Yeah.
There was nobody else like forcing me to do it. I was forcing other people to do it. I don't really have a sober group of friends or a specific network. I'm fortunate to have a lot of friends, all of whom are supportive in different ways, some of whom are sober, some of whom aren't. But also like I left New York last year. My building got sold, and so I had to move out. And I was like, all right, I'm just leaving New York. And then I've mostly been on tour then. I've been, in the last year, I've been in England, Ireland, Kenya. I've done, 100 shows around the country. I was in Canada. I was in Mexico. I have a little camper in my sister's backyard in California where I stay when I'm not staying somewhere else. But when this tour ends, I'll be on the East Coast and then just sort of fishing around for a place to stay. So I don't have the Thursday night meeting, or even, regular Friday dinner with a sober friend, or, a sober group of friends. I always have people I can reach out to. And I think, too, that I have sort of an unfair advantage over a lot of other people in recovery is that very early on, I documented my recovery in print in the form of The Long Run in 2011. And then that went fucking everywhere.
A long run?
It's called The Long Run. It was my biggest Kindle single. It was it was published, it just published digitally by Amazon, but there have been like 90,000 copies sold. It's been translated into a bunch of different languages. So I have, from that, and then like doing stuff with Rich, and I've written for thefix.com, and I've just been sort of loud and proud about my sobriety. And then everywhere I go, I have people supporting me. There's this guy, Ed, in Austin, who comes to every one of my shows when I'm in town. He's, and he sort of introduced himself. Oh, I'm on the same team. Oh, awesome. So we talk every time I'm in town, and almost every show there's somebody there who's in recovery. So I sort of made the world my support group.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things you did was just basically you stated, I'm done with this. I'm done with this lifestyle. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. I can't do this anymore, like ever, like not even one. And so The Long Run was how long was that for? Was that your first year?
I wrote it in late 2011. So I'd been sober for like 2.5 years.
Okay. All right. Okay. So this is your documentary about recovery, or about, sobriety.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's things that you have used to hold yourself accountable. I mean, and that's basically where I'm trying to get at as well. I want people to anchor themselves to possibilities. What are my options, or what are my possibilities? And social media has become a mecca for discussing sobriety, for discussing anything, really. I mean, you can be open to vulnerability about your life in any way, shape, or form, whether it's a food issue, or whether it's a drug addiction, or whatever the case may be. You have a forum to discuss it, and also hold yourself accountable by your own media, by what you've put out there. Now, do you also have like a meditative practice, or a spiritual practice, or a philosophy that you follow?
I want to get into that, but let me back up to the thing, sort of hair splitting between social media and writing. Writing for me has been the greatest means by which I hold myself accountable. And I would encourage everybody and anybody to write. You don't need to publish it, just to be able to have that dialogue with yourself, to write words on the page, leave, and then come back and read them again and say, yeah, that's how I feel, or no, I didn't get it right at all. More than anything else, writing has been what saved me. And, one of the things that as helpful as social media has been in places like Iran and Turkey, with sort of like revolutions and underground movements, and then the mounting acceptance of trans people, there have been very meaningful support groups. But also, my experience of social media is not that it's representative of real life, but that it's the opposite of real life. And I've had so many hurtful, I've had so many people troll me or comment. If you read the comments on one of my pieces, you would think that everybody in the world hates me. And that's not true. It's just that the way people work is when we read something and we like it, we're like, oh, that was good. And we sort of move on. And if we read something we hated, then we post a comment.
Yeah.
So I think for someone in early recovery, that could be a real quagmire. And I wouldn't want, and there have definitely been times where I was like, I got to just walk away from this and not engage. So social media has been important for me to reach people, and definitely to support the tours and what I'm publishing and stuff like that. But it's important for us all to remember that not only is it not real life, it's kind of the opposite of real life.
I hear you. I mean, I totally get it. And there's so much of it that, like you say, there is a face to it, and in many cases, it's a very superficial element. Okay, and if you touch a nerve, then you could get a backlash from people that that don't know how to deal with stuff that's not on the surface. They don't know how to deal with things that are intimate and that are heartfelt. I do agree on that fact. I mean, there's pros and cons to anything.
Yeah. And you just, with anything else, you just got to be selective. Back to your question about spirituality or meditative practice or anything like that. In my life, I've been incredibly resistant to meditation. My mom was always like, oh, just put a smile on your face and you'll be happier. And I was like, oh, Mom, that's bullshit. And then I looked it up and, well, science backs her up. It's true that if you actually smile, you will actually feel happier. And that's been tested in laboratories by people in white coats, And then meditation, I was like, oh, that's just sort of hippie frou-frou shit. And then I looked it up and I was like, okay, yeah, again, science says that meditation works. So I got to try it. And I don't meditate as often as I would like to. I do try and do it, when I'm stressed out. I found, at one point in my life, I was like, oh, I'm really stressed out. I need to be meditating every day. And then my girlfriend dumped me and moved out. And then I was like, oh, I no longer feel the need to meditate every day. I was just in a bad relationship. That's what it was. That just had to end, and now I feel fine. I don't have anything like a spiritual connection with anything. I don't believe in God or positive vibes or any kind of higher power. I'm not atheist because I think that that's a little arrogant to say, as human beings, oh, I know there is no God, because we don't know. And I think that human beings in general would be really well served by confessing how little we actually know. But this is a tricky one. I don't think that the notion of God or, everything happens for a reason, I don't think that's helpful to us. I think what's more helpful is to think we live in a disordered world with no order and no reason. And the only order that exists or reason that exists is what we impose on this chaos. And we have the ultimate responsibility. It's entirely up to us. So what kind of world do you want? Do you want a world where we treat each other with respect and kindness, where we help each other? Or do you want the world from the Terminator movies where we're all just sort of like in perpetual war with robots? And this issue of faith and belief, this is something I sort of butt heads with people, with time and time again. I do have a sense of ethics and right and wrong, and but I don't think that anything happens for a reason. I really feel like it's all up to us, and feeling comfortable in that belief compels me to be good with greater strength than fear that, oh, maybe there is an afterlife and I'm going to be punished for looking at boobs or whatever arbitrary thing, one religion or another defines as wrong or evil. I feel like it's up to us. And I know what kind of world I want.
No, and I'm a firm believer of, be the change you want to see in the world. And it sounds as though you've adopted a code of conduct. And I feel that it comes intrinsically in all of us. I think we all have it in us. We both have the good and evil within us. And we just have to make a decision as to which way we want to go. And, when I wanted to go bad, I went really bad.
Yep.
And there was no hold bar. I figured if I'm going to go this route, then I'm all in. So I'm kind of an all or nothing kind of guy.
Yeah, me too. And this is one of the people always say, be a good person. I think that at best people are morally ambiguous. That like every Hitler's mom loved him. She thought that he was great. And Mother Teresa did some things that are really questionable. All of us, there are no moral absolutes. Martin Luther King Jr. was a philanderer. that doesn't, in my mind, that doesn't diminish the good that he did, but it just, it reminds me that, everybody's got some secrets, man. Everybody's done bad things, and that you have done bad things or things that you feel shame or regret for does not mean that you're not also capable of doing incredible things.
No, it's the human condition, basically.
Yeah.
Listen, so here's something that I'm curious about, because I'm a big Rich Roll fan, and you've been on his show 7 times. So how did that happen? And, how did that relationship between you and Rich evolve?
We just clicked, man. It's funny, my relationship with Rich Roll is probably, the best argument I've ever found. He and I, there's a lot of stuff that he and I don't agree about, on, and I love disagreeing with him about that stuff, and he likes it too, we, it's like a ping pong match, it's absolutely a battle, but it's far more entertaining and engaging than for us to just say, yeah, I feel that way too. Yeah, I feel that way too. Another podcaster who had Rich on his show and me connected us. And then Rich was like, all right, I'm going to be in New York, let's do this, and I read Finding Ultra, and I made some shitty judgments about him reading that book, that he would be some like type A, super competitive, go kind of guy. And then he just showed up at my house in Brooklyn one day, and he came in, we sat on the floor and just sort of like went really, really deep. And, he walked in a stranger and walked out, like a trusted friend I had just met for the first time.
Man, and, I love it.
So many good things have come from Rich, and I'm incredibly grateful for his friendship. And I don't think that he would mind me sharing this too, is, that like, a lot of us are huge fans of his, and, we see him and the way that his life is and the way that he is, and we want to be like that. Rich has bad days too. And every once in a while he'll call me when he's having a bad day, or when he's like, just in a shit mood, or things aren't going his way. It makes me feel better to know that somebody, who a lot of us perceive as superhuman, no, he has human weakness too, like we all do.
Well, I want to get him on the show. Right. So I sent him an email a couple months ago. I was like, Rich, I want to get you on the show. He's like, dude, I'm doing videos and I'm like swamped. I've got, this year is like crazy for me,
he is. And that is all true. I'm absolutely sure he totally wants to do it. And, if there were another 10 hours in the day, he would have done it already. And also I know few people who are trying to do more in their lives. He's pulled so many different directions right now.
No, it's wild. It's wild. Anyway, it's very cool. It's very interesting. This podcast world has brought me, in contact with so many amazing people, and, got an opportunity to get, inside the head of so many. Look, we're on this interview right now that I'm just like totally pumped about. And so as far as your diet goes, are you part of the vegan movement, or you still eat steak?
Man, I feel like Mulder on X-Files, where it's like, I want to believe, I really want to believe that veganism is possible for all of us. But I've tried it a couple of times, and listen, absolutely everybody should take 6 weeks and, take a flying leap at eating vegan, because I learned so much from doing it. One of the things that I learned is that I need to be eating more greens, and that, very few of us are eating enough greens, enough vegetables. Man, traveling around the country, I see so many of my friends. Every time I see them, they're 10 pounds heavier, 20 pounds heavier, guys in their late 30s dying of heart attacks. Mm-hmm. The drug that's killing us is not meth or crack or heroin. It's food.
Yeah, it's true.
I absolutely believe that. But also, like, we're on tour right now, and like when you wake up in the morning, it's like, well, okay, I can drop like $8 to $15 on, healthy organic fruits and vegetables, or the continental breakfast is free. And this will not be a newsflash, but it's fucking hard out here, man. if somebody puts food in front of me, I'm going to eat it.
Yep.
Like if it's like possum fritters, that's what I'm going to eat, whatever it is, so like we had a day off today. So Star went to the grocery store, and, I'm drinking a green juice right now. And like, we got a bunch of fruits and vegetables, and we have, nuts and raisins in the car and stuff like that. But when we show up at the venue and they have like fucking pizza or Twizzlers or whatever crap, that's what we eat. And then when I go home, I try really hard to eat right. And for me, that's, oatmeal in the morning, a big salad with chicken for lunch. And then, like a smoothie and snacks or something for dinner.
So the life of the roadie, the guy that's on the road, the artist, the singer-songwriter that's moving from town to town. You never know what's coming one day to the next.
Listen, routines are important, and it's so important in early sobriety to shore up the decision you've made with whatever it takes, man. If your, hardcore, devout belief in Catholicism is what's keeping you sober, then I absolutely support you. I'm in your corner 100%. I will fucking get down on my knees and pray with you. I'm totally fine, whatever it takes. But as you move further along the line, you need to know who you're going to be when your routine fails you. And it can't be that I missed a meeting, I'm going to go drink. Or I got in a car accident, so I'm going to go drink. Or my mother died, so I'm going to go drink. You need to know you need to make that change in your core. And being out on the road, it's tough. It's challenging. We're sleeping in a different place every night. Often you don't sleep well. You're eating crap food, drinking too much coffee, not enough coffee. Obviously we're in bars all the time. There were a couple of chicks who wanted me to come out to their car and like do fat lines of blow with them the other night. Temptation is always everywhere. It's always there. Nobody is more clever than an alcoholic or an addict who needs a fix. We'll fucking do anything. You just have to know, I can't breathe underwater. I can't fly through the air like a bird. I can't drink.
Yeah, I love it.
Those are things I don't do. I can't do them.
I love it, man.
The breathing underwater thing, that would be cool. That one I need to work on. But you just got to get it right in your head that, clarity, just no matter what happens today, nothing in the world can make me drink.
Oh, man. Okay. I got it. All right. So, Mishka, it's time for me to turn this show over to you, my friend. It's time for you to share with us your story. So now I want to hear about the battle you had against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life when you hit rock bottom, and then finally your journey into sobriety up until today. So, Mishka, take it away, buddy.
All right. Let me swallow a mouthful of juice here. When I was a kid, like 13 or 14, that's when I started drinking, and I'd gotten picked on a lot in school. We moved around a lot. And, that was the first time I got drunk, I was like, oh, this is who I am. This is who I will be. And I just felt, I finally had found my identity. Then when I was 15, I left high school and started a college level program. My first semester at school, another student got a semi-automatic assault rifle and shot up the school, shot 6 people, killed 2 of them. And, terrified all of us. I stayed up the whole night. And then when I got home the next day on zero sleep, I found out my parents were getting a divorce. And then we lost the house to the bank. And I sort of just spent the next 17 years in just this sad tornado of alcohol and cough syrup and cocaine and hating myself. I felt guilty. That I was responsible for my parents' divorce, and and just hating the world at large. To have them take our house away made me hate my dad for leaving. It made me hate my mom for having me. I hated God, America, money, capitalism, banks, everything. And then when I was 32, I just finally had this epiphany that I was more afraid of my life than I was of my death. that I was okay with dying, but what really scared the shit out of me was living. And I love my mother, and I promised her that I would never kill myself. And so I was like, I'm stuck here, stuck in this. What if I made a life that's worth living? And then I just started pushing back, and I stopped drinking. I started running. I started trying to tear down the person I'd been and build a human being in his place. And that's a long process, and I'm still working on that. But I found success as a writer. I was able to quit my job in the bar. I haven't had a real job in 4 years now. With the money that I made from publishing my writing via Amazon, I was able to buy my mother a house. And
awesome.
That was a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That's awesome.
And now I am not perfect. I do not have a perfect life. I'm not a perfect man, but I'm a lot better than I was. And, there's still chaos and sadness and anger and all that shit in my life, but it's a lot more manageable now. I have a great relationship with my father. I didn't talk to him for 7 years. I have a great relationship with my sister. I didn't talk to her for 7 years. And, and my sister has 4 little kids, and they love their weird, creepy uncle. And I love that.
And that's your story.
That's it in a nutshell, man. I fucking came to my senses one day, finally.
Well, if you don't mind if I do a little probing here.
Yeah, go for it.
There was so much of your book that rattled me. And it's your story, man. It's your life, and it's fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, so much of it in the beginning was it was terrifying, as I was going through it with you. And, you say you felt like you blamed yourself for your parents' divorce. What was that all about?
It's funny because I had so many friends who, from divorced parents, and I always heard that thing that kids blame themselves. And I was like, well, that's stupid. Why would they ever do that? And then it happened to me, and I was like, oh, that's totally me, and I was scared of the dark when I was a kid. I mean, hell, I'm still scared of the dark. I'm 39. But when I was a kid, the way that it manifested is that, I would wake up from a nightmare in the middle of the night and go and crawl in my parents' bed. And I think I was like 12 before I slept, before I was sort of sleeping in my bed every night. And I was a difficult kid. I was too smart and too sensitive and too big and too loud, and I acted out. And when my dad split, it had been clear to me since I was a very small child that my dad didn't really like me. And then when my dad split, it was sort of obvious to me in my mind that it's because of me. I was had to fucking crawl in their bed every night because I was weak, because I was a pussy. And then I was he had told me several times that I was spoiled, and my behavioral issues were well documented. And I was like, oh, it's my fault, and then I carried that with me for a long time, and alternating between blaming myself and being like, oh, it's all my fault, and then blaming my father and being like, it's all his fault. And, and neither one of those was correct.
Well, later on, you find out that that's the case. As you do the work, you recognize that, we're all human beings having a human experience, doing the best we can. Yeah. But there was that moment when your dad left and the house was being foreclosed on, and you guys were having these yard sales. So
yeah, still fucks me up.
It fucked me up, man, because this is where the name of the book comes from.
So I guess I was 16 by that point, and we were in the process of liquidating all our belongings, trying to pay bills and trying to get rid of shit because we knew we were going to lose the house. So we had this sort of months long, just unending yard sale. It just went on and on and on. And we lived in New Hampshire, which is the whitest, at the time it was the whitest state in the Union. And I had a Vietnamese foster brother, and my little sister's adopted. She's Native American. We always got kind of fucking sideways glances from people because half the kids were brown. And then they didn't like us because we weren't from there. You know, we weren't, you know, sort of crusty New England blue blood. So then, like, from having lived in this town with these people who condescended to us, and then had to have them pick through our belongings and just sort of fucking drive us down to the, oh, you've got it out for $1. I'll give you a nickel. Just haggle us down to the. I just fucking hated everyone, and I hated us, and I hated my parents, you know, and it was. And then there was one day when I was out there with my mom, and like I, you know, sort of bullied her or convinced her to buy me some beer. So we were drinking like warm Budweiser, and then it started to rain, and we were like, fuck. So we're scrambling to get all the shit in the house before it gets soaked. And then she just broke down. She just collapsed. She'd never done it before and has never done it again. But her knees went, and she was just crying so hard she couldn't hold herself up. And I was 16 years old, you know, and I had to carry her into the house and sort of like get her up to her bed and tried to comfort her, and then run back out and try and get all the shit into the garage that I could. And then I started to cry, and then I was like, no, fucking stop, like, man up, just be a man. You cried enough, and it hasn't helped, so you got to do something. And then I swore, I said, whatever it takes, you know, I will get revenge on my dad, and I will get revenge on the world for doing this to us, and I will make it up to my mom. You know, I will make things right. And that's a lot for a 16-year-old to take on, man. And you know, and that shit weighed heavily on me over the years, because I mean, I was serious about it, and I took it very serious that I was going to like do right by my mom, you know. And you know, it took me 20 years, but I did it.
Dude, it was so, like, I was blown away by that whole episode, and then I realized that that's where the premise of the book comes from, and it all started to kind of make sense. The disdain that you had for your dad at that time, you know, and how angry you were. And then there was that moment where your sister has your nephew.
Yeah.
And she calls him Mika.
Yeah.
Man, that was such an endearing part of the story too.
Well, you know, my sister and I, you know, she's 2 years older than me. You know, we were little kids. We were like best of friends. And then somewhere along the line, I don't know what happened, or if it was just a natural thing, but, you know, I sort of like turned on her, you know, and then we were just it was like cats and dogs for the rest of our lives, you know. And I think part of it is that she was the good daughter and I was the bad son, you know, and we sort of gravitated to being these archetypes, you know. And then when I was 25, she had her first kid, and she named him after me. And it was, you know, you can't, if somebody gives you a muffin, you're like, oh, that's nice. If somebody names a child after you, there's no words for that.
Yeah.
It's every feeling, you know, every emotion. You know, I mean, I was flattered, I was humbled, I was terrified. I was like, well, is this some fucking manipulative thing, or, you know, whatever, like, you know, and I like, you know, I just want to put my family behind me, and, you know, and sort of like get on with the rest of my life without them. And of course you can't do that. That's ridiculous. So, you know, I had forced myself to, you know, so I'm going to take a year off drinking to prove that I'm not an alcoholic. Newsflash, folks. If you have to take a year off drinking, it's because you're a fucking alcoholic. Alcoholics don't need to take a year off. Or, sorry, people who aren't alcoholics don't need to take a year off. So then, you know, the first time that I went out there to meet Mika, you know, I was fucking high on cough syrup, and I'd been up, you know, for days, like snorting Adderall. And I just, you know, had this, when I sort of held him in my arms, I you know, had this absolutely bizarre vision of sort of humanity, of just this sort of, just all the worst shit, just all the shit I'd been through, and all the shit my friends had been through, of like just getting beat up or degraded or humiliated or fucking raped or molested by like your boyfriend, or, you know, your fucking cousin or your father, or, you know, just all the horrible shit that we'd been through. And then this helpless little child who was just totally pure and, like, you know, never did anything to anybody, and like, what the fuck was going to happen to him in this world, you know? And I read that passage, at readings, and it always, I always just about lose it. I just have to like rope it in at the end. And the way that I rope it in is, I said goodbye to Mika when I was leaving on this tour. And he is at least my height. He's probably 6'4", 6'5". He just turned 14. He's 6'4" or 6'5".
Good Lord.
Size 17 shoes.
Jesus.
I've never seen his dick, but I'm pretty sure it's bigger than mine. But the kid's doing okay. He's going to be all right, And he's a total sweetheart. I gave him a big hug when I was leaving, and I was like, Mika, I love you. And he said, I love you too. He's such a great kid, and they all are. They all came out fine, and they love me, and I love them, and they just sort of accept me, the way that I am. I'm the weird fucking. I walked out of my camper in the backyard the other day, and Mika saw me, and he was like, well, if it isn't our mangy old transient uncle. And I was like, you little shit. Dude. I love you so much. Right?
That is fucking beautiful, man. That's the best part. I mean, it always takes me back to where I was just this complete train wreck, and I was doing blow and smoking weed and popping pills every day, and I couldn't stop, and I ruined my marriage, and we were just about to have a baby, and so my ex-wife now, she had my daughter who's 13 years old now, and I just remember I had just barely a couple months sober, and I'm holding her in my arms, and I'm just thinking I'm just in my whole head going, your dad is a fucking drug addict. Like, yeah, you poor thing. Like, this is just like, how did this even happen? And I'm just staring at her, and I'm holding her, and yeah, just this sense of like humanity comes over me, and the reality that, I could make a difference if I wanted to, like if I really wanted to make a difference here, I could. And, I'm 13 years sober, and she's 13 years old. So, it kind of gives you an idea of where my head went.
That's awesome. Yeah. That is awesome. That is the greatest gift, man.
She's spoiled rotten. She is so unbelievably spoiled rotten. If I could give her the entire world, I would. And, a lot of it stems from just that, from just how wretched my life was and how badly I treated her mother, that it was like I gave her everything I had, and so yeah. I was right there when you were like explaining them. I'm like, God, I'm these children that come into our lives are the absolute glue that binds us all together.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and there's a good analogy there too, because in the book, Mika is he's a plot point, right? He is that baby, and that's your experience of him as a reader or as a listener. But he has his own life now. He has his own narrative, and I'm a minor character. I'm a plot point in his story.
Yeah.
It's been a big thing that I've taken on in my sobriety is to push back against the narrative that everyone understands of, this is how you get sober. This is what sober means. This is, it's not one static thing. There's a bunch of there are different ways of getting sober. Sober means different things to different people. I still eat mushrooms whenever I get the chance. It's never led to me drinking. And if anything, what it does is I have a weird, fun, intense, depressing, harrowing time. And then I wake up the next day and I'm like, oh, shit. And then I have more clarity about what I need to do to move forward. A lot of people would say I'm not sober because of that. That's why I speak about it publicly, is because, I want people to know about it. So I think that, I don't know, I just want it to be a big open conversation, because I think that's what's going to help all of us,
And that's what we're doing. We're having a conversation about, how you've changed your life in so many dramatic ways. One of which is the one with your father, because that's what really pulled me in, man. I had a 2-year battle with my dad where I didn't speak to him for 2 years. I just hated him, because when my parents divorced, my sister and my dad ganged up against my mom. and my sister started producing all this evidence against my mother to try and discredit her in the divorce. And it was stupid because in the United States, it's 50-50. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Right?
It doesn't matter.
Why go through all this ordeal just because you're sadistic, right?
Well, because anger is powerful shit.
Yeah. So it did, and it consumed me for a while because, I didn't speak to him for 2 years. And I know that you said you hadn't spoken to your dad in the book for, I think it was a long time. Was it 5 years?
It was 6 or 7.
Like when you saw him for the first time with Mika.
Yeah. I was 25 then, and I hadn't seen him since I was 18.
Yeah, and you were just pissed. Yeah. So you were, and you did get him to come forth with some information though.
Well, the biggest thing for me was, and this was something that happened when I was 26, and then I sort of filed it away in my head for years after that because I didn't know how to deal with it. But it ended up being the sort of like crucial thing, for how to understand my father and how to understand my relationship with him and how to find a way to forgiving him was, when I was 26, I was out on, a ridiculous sort of kamikaze tour, and I stayed at his house when he wasn't there and got fucked up, and then basically broke into his filing cabinet and, read, the annulment agreement, which was, because he's a Catholic, he had to have the marriage annulled in order to be able to remarry in the Catholic Church. So I went in and read the annulment agreement that he didn't want me to read. And in there I found out that my father had been molested by his mother until he was 14.
Oh.
And yeah. And I had no idea how to deal with that, what that meant, how to process that. I mean, I think I was like, at that time, I was like too angry to even think about him as a human being. And then, so it was only like much, much later, after I gotten sober, that I sort of had the epiphany that like that experience transformed him and transformed his psyche. I mean, for a child to be betrayed like that by the one person who is charged first and foremost with their protection, it was a horrific betrayal, and both of his parents were alcoholics and drug addicts, and he grew up in an environment and in a world that fortunately I will never understand. My dad was not a great father, and he was not a great husband, and he's done a lot of shit that that hurt us and that made us angry, and and he still does stuff that hurts me and makes me angry. But I have such a greater understanding of who he is as a human being, and how his experiences formed the person that he is, that now I'm able to say you have one mom and you have one dad in this world, if you're lucky. That's it. There's no do-overs, and I love my dad, and I'm going to make the most out of that relationship. And I'm going to, I spent, years and years alienating him because he failed me in some big ways, and because he wasn't perfect. My father never hit me. He never degraded me. He never humiliated me. He never threatened me physically. There's a lot of shit that I wish that we had done, but it's important to see what he did do right. He also made sure that I was never molested. I mean, as kids, we were safe.
Yeah.
And, and he worked his ass off to make sure that we had all that we needed when we were kids. In the process of writing the book and stuff, I interviewed him about a lot and, talked to him more and more sort of about his life as a child and a young man and stuff like that. And I really got to see him not as capital D dad, the, like sort of Darth Vader who I was fighting against, but just a guy who married the wrong woman and married her out of a sense of obligation. And before that, he was a young man. And before that, he was a boy. And before that, he was a baby. And sort of to see him the same way that I saw Mika, as that helpless child. I don't have a big investment in forgiveness. I don't think everybody should be forgiven. I don't. I mean, the way that I felt for a long time is, somebody fucks you, like, you fucking remember it for the rest of your life so they don't do it again. I forgave my father by accident.
It sounds like it.
Against my will. I just came to have so much more, such a greater understanding of who he is as a person, that then, all the resentment and anger that I had for him just sort of dried up. And I was like, I sort of went looking for it one day, and I was like, oh shit, where did I put that? I couldn't find it. I just wasn't angry at him anymore.
Do you think that if you had not read the annulment letter, that you would have had such a strong inclination to forgive him?
No. And that's, again, that's one of the reasons why I push against moral absolutism is because I did a bad thing, right? I stole from him. Basically breaking and entering. I broke into the filing cabinet and stole information that did not belong to me. He never would have told me that. I know, I think he would say the same thing, that he would never have told me that. So I did a bad thing, and there was a good outcome.
And even still, I'm going to take the role of Rich here. Even still, because in my mind, at least for me, there's that question of, did I find it accidentally, or was this just what
was
I was?
It the hand of God?
No, let's not, because people have said. I got to tell you, man. In my world, talking about God in that sense it's delicate, and you got to walk on a fine line with that.
Yeah.
But is there, did something guide you in that direction, man? You were seeking throughout that book. You were seeking that relief. You were seeking for that relief, man. You were in a tremendous amount of pain, anger, rage,
Yep.
And I have to believe that you reading that there was this kind of like,
well,
wow.
that's the thing is, I absolutely see your point that, was I predestined to find that, or it's almost like a Greek myth or something, was something guiding my hand, and I would counter with, did I secretly love my father very much and want to find something, to find a reason or a way to forgive him? And then when I got that information, I was able to say, I'm going to see this, I'm going to experience this, I'm going to interpret this as the key to unlock my relationship with him and to allow myself to forgive him.
It's so ambiguous. It's tough. It's tough.
And you know what? I'm totally fine with ambiguity.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
That's a big thing with
I'm okay
sobriety,
with that.
man, is you gotta live with not knowing.
Yes.
Would I ever be able to take another drink and be okay? I don't know. I'm not going to fucking take that chance. I'm going to live with the ambiguity,
I get it, man, but there's so many, like I said, that the life that you led and the struggles that you went through, they just kind of pushed you in directions. They pushed you in directions. You made conscious decisions to go one way or the other. But one of the beautiful points, or one of the things that touched me too, was when you and your dad, for the first time after so many years, were working together in that studio apartment where you were doing a build out.
Yeah.
And he asked you how you want the door hung.
That's I guess I got to give these people the answer. The answer is well hung. And that's the thing, man, is that that's the exact sense of humor that I have. And now that my dad and I sorted out all this shit, we have so much fucking fun together. Man.
Yeah.
We love hanging out and we have a good time. And, the other thing is that I've worked in bars in New York forever and I have a lot of good friends and people are like, hey, can I buy you a drink? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, no, you know what? You buy my dad a drink. He still drinks. He's fine. I've never seen him drunk in my life. He'll have that free drink. I love that. It's we have a ton of fun together. Now we just had to, I just had to write a fucking book about it, and then now everything's okay.
But again, the cathartic experience that we talk about here, that many people just don't know how to approach it. You spent, 15, 20 years almost killing yourself and actually wishing for death. There were so many parts in the book where you just wished for death.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I want to talk about this Opana shit, because that shit blew my mind when you were talking about it. Because right after, you have this moment with your dad and you do this build out, you just spiral out of control with this Opana shit. So
that's one of the reasons too I push against the concept that, or the idea that of outside forces at work, because it wasn't like things got bad, things got worse, things got really terrible, and then there was a big pivotal point, and then things changed. I ebbed and flowed for years, where it was like, okay, things are getting a little better, and now they're getting really bad. And they get a little better, and they get really bad, and it was just, just oscillating back and forth, and then, finally I just had to fucking make up my damn mind, no, I've walked through the door that says worse and worse enough times. I'm going to walk through the door that says better and better. But yeah, Opana was just this super potent painkiller that came into my life at the exact wrong time. I was working with this construction company, and my back pain was just sort of getting out of control, and I'd been drinking for a long time to deal with it, and then taking Vicodin and Percocet and whatever. And then a part-time girlfriend, full-time drug supplier, hooked me up with a full prescription of Opana. And I loved it. I loved it right away. I still love it now, like thinking about it in my mind. That's one thing that where I'm like, I'll still have dreams about it occasionally and just be like, oh. I just thought it was the solution until one day I got some morphine, and when I did the morphine, I was like, I don't feel anything. Like, this is kind of fucking boring. Wait, if I find morphine boring, what have I been doing that makes me not feel this? And then I went and researched Opana, and I was like, oh, pharmaceutical heroin. That's the shit that's stronger than OxyContin. Oh, fuck. And then, getting off that was a nightmare.
How'd you get off that?
Fucking just white knuckled it, man. I mean, the same way I've gotten off everything else in my life is just suffering.
Dude, it's a miracle you're still alive, because you did these. Yeah, you would just come off the shit, right? Yeah. Just fucking. Sometimes the fastest way to do something is just to do it. Oh my God. So today you've got this amazing relationship with your family. How's your mother?
Oh, my mom's awesome. My mom's always been awesome. I mean, that's the thing, is that even when shit was like at its worst, my mom and I were always totally straight with each other. I always loved her. She's always loved me. It's weird to have, a relationship with one parent be that good and that uncomplicated, and then have my relationship with my father be just fucking off the rails all the time.
Well, we get it.
Yeah, I guess you do.
There's so many of us that are struggling with something. We're holding on to something. We're holding on to a resentment. We're unable to forgive. And what we don't realize is that it's just eating at us. We're killing ourselves by holding on to these resentments. And in many cases, we only have half the information. Like I was, like in the beginning when I was asking you, I think in our generation, we don't have a problem, writing a book like yours, which, 20 years ago, nobody would have written a book like this. Nobody would have opened themselves up to this kind of intimacy, because it's intimate on levels that are almost unheard of. But today we can do this. And what if your dad had written a memoir? What if you could have picked up a book and gone, oh man, wow, I fucking get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, how much pain could you have avoided if all of us, with all the resentments and anger we have towards our parents, we knew the whole story? Yeah.
It's going to be a weird, uncomfortable conversation with my with my sister's kids when they read this book. So maybe that's why my dad didn't write a memoir.
And so you've been in situations where you almost were a father, right?
Yeah. That's the that's been the most sort of terrifying thing for me. In that sort of dark period of my life I was like, if I become a father now, then I'm just, sort of, as a child, it was clear to me that that my dad didn't want me. And I was like, well, if I have a kid now, then I'm not going to want him or her. And then I've just gone and done the exact same thing that my dad has done, except worse.
Right. No, absolutely. So do you plan on having kids in the future?
I do not. I love kids. My sister has 4 kids. I love them to death, but I don't feel a need to have a copy of me floating around. I love my sister's kids as if they were my own. And people say, oh, it's selfish of you, not to have kids, or, you're afraid. I would counter that there's a lot of kids in this world who could use a good uncle, who could use someone who cares about them. There's a lot of kids who have parents who aren't necessarily getting parented. I do my part. I play my role.
I got you. You're Uncle Mishka.
Absolutely.
Now, Mishka is not even your real name, right?
That's correct. It's a nickname. My birth name is Mikhail, and that's the same name that Mika has. And this is probably the first example of me being like hard-headed. Is that my grandfather's name was Michael, so I was named Mikhail after him, and then they called me Mishka when I was a kid, which is sort of a diminutive of Mikhail. And then my mom's, the first day of school, my mom was like, okay, you're going to school now. Your name is Mikhail. And I was like, nah. I know how this works. My name's Mishka. Your name's Mom. Let's not get crazy here.
So you're just changing yourself.
Yeah. When I was like, 5, I was like, no, I'm Mishka. And I have been since then.
From 5, it was on.
Yeah.
All right. So give us your list of books and how our listeners can get a hold of you, or if they want to go and listen to you while you're on tour, how can they find your gigs and your dates?
I'm Mishka Shubaly. I'm the only one. So it's mishkashubaly.com. I'm at Mishka Shubaly on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Facebook. Like I said, I'll be friends with anyone. And my tour dates are always posted on my website. I try and, sort of get them out on Facebook and Twitter and all that shit as well. The new book is called I Swear I'll Make It Up to You. I have 6 best-selling Kindle singles on Amazon. I have a new record that came out last year called Coward's Path. You should buy everything. It's so good.
Fuck yeah. And other than your literature, is there a book that you would recommend that was one of your favorites growing up?
Well, growing up took me a long time, so that's a long window. One of my favorite books is a novel called Jernigan, and it's not an inspirational story. It's a harrowing, incredibly realistic, incredibly detailed account of the damage that alcohol and nihilism can do in one person's life. And it's a gripping story. It's funny. It's touching. It's terrifying. I've bought and given away 8 or 10 copies of it.
Really?
Yeah. It's called Jernigan. It's by David Gates. And yeah, if you're teetering on the edge of thinking that, maybe I should quit, I don't want to quit, read that book. You'll fucking come correct after that. I gotta bounce. I gotta go do laundry, man.
Well, give us one more question.
All right.
If you could give our listeners only one suggestion, what would it be?
Let it go.
Words to Live by Mishka Shubaly. All right, folks, we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida. Give us a pura vida, Mishka.
Pura vida.
Go get your laundry done.
All right. Cheers, brother.
Thanks, man.
Later.
Peace.
Thank you for joining us on the Share Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.thesharepodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-step fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-step recovery and the impact it had in our lives, we do not promote or